What do you think? How can you assess the situation in Syria now, before the statement of President Obama and after his statement?
Well, I mean, prior to this Russian-Syrian deal on the chemical weapons issue, it looked like President Obama wanted to use particularly cruise missile strikes against Syria to basically send a strong signal to the Assad regime not to use chemical weapons. However, because of this latest development, there's a certain pause in the whole idea of using military force. Right now, Secretary Kerry is going to be meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov in Geneva, and they're going to see if they can work out some type of deal, perhaps even a UN Security Council resolution to safeguard and then eventually eliminate the chemical stockpiles of Syria. So right now, the military situation is kind of off the table in terms of the U.S. Government. But if the U.S. determines that this offer on chemical weapons is not serious enough, then it could resurface.
Mm. So what is the timetable for destroying the chemical weapons? Obama asked the Congress to postpone the vote. For how long?
Well, I heard last night on television one of the leading members of the Senate said, well, we'll give this thing a couple of weeks to see if this offer is serious and the Assad government is willing to comply with giving up all of its chemical weapons. If that process is serious, then they'll go ahead with that process. If not, I think within a couple of weeks we may see this resolution to use force against Syria again come up before Congress.
Mm. What will it give to Syria and to this crisis to be solved if Assad leaves the country forever?
Well, if Assad leaves, that will not end the crisis altogether, because you have his minority group, the Alawites. They're predominant in the military. They have to be reassured that there would not be a bloodletting against them, even if Assad leaves. The problem in Syria now, it's a very sectarian situation where you have some of the Sunni Muslim elements who are linked to Al-Qaeda saying the Alawites are heretics, which means, they could be killed if they're captured. So the fighting could go on unless the Alawites are assured of a place in the new Syria. But that's going to be very, very difficult.
But would it be a positive sign, a positive beginning for negotiating?
Well, certainly that's Assad as president has been the problem, and if he leaves, that would alleviate a lot of it. But there's still this sectarian dimension. The Sunni Muslims of Syria have always considered themselves the natural rulers of Syria, but the Assad family, because of their Alawite roots, have been ruling since basically 1970, the father and the son. So the Alawites have to be reassured that they will have a place in the new Syria. If not, the fighting will continue. And there's also a possibility of the breakup of the Syrian state. The Alawite heartland is up in the mountains near the Mediterranean coast, and they could always retreat to that area and carve out a statelet, a small state, and other parts of Syria could be carved up as well. There's a Kurdish region in the northeast of Syria. They don't like either the rebels or the Assad government. So it's a very, very complicated situation.
How much can the West and also the United States be sure that after the collapse of this regime, Syria will prosper, or it will choose the way of peace and democracy and reconciliation?
Well, that's the big unknown, to be frank about it. There are moderate elements within the Syrian opposition, particularly in the Free Syrian Army. But there are also Al-Qaeda elements or groups linked to Al-Qaeda within the opposition. And apparently they're some of the most effective fighters against the Assad regime. So one would hope that the moderates would win if Assad falls, but there's always that danger that the Al-Qaeda fighters, because they have more zeal, because they're a more effective fighting force, could win. So that would be a disaster, I think, not only for Syria, but for the region as a whole.
So why does the West, in that case, press for his resignation or for a change in Syria? Let it stay like it is.
Well, part of it is because Assad, the president, is kind of a lightning rod. The hope is that if he leaves, then there could be a negotiated settlement. The idea is to bring all the parties together in some type of conference and to hash out the division of power and to bring about a semblance of democracy. That's the ultimate goal. But getting there from point A to point B is very problematic.
So if it doesn't prove that this collapse of his regime was good, well, what should we do then?
I don't know.
We shall say sorry. It was a mistake. Now Al-Qaeda is reigning in Syria too.
Well, I mean, that's one of the big dangers, and I don't think, and that's why the proposed strikes before this Russian-Syrian deal was going to be limited in nature, because I don't think the Obama administration wants a complete collapse of the Syrian state right now because of that very scenario you pointed out. They want to punish Assad, or wanted to punish Assad for the use of chemical weapons, but at the same time, they're very wary of what's going to come after Assad. So that's why they want a political solution, and that's why they want the moderate elements of the opposition to predominate over the situation. But, you know, in a civil war, it's very difficult to predict an outcome.
How do you assess the situation of Armenians now, still there in Syria? Are they in danger, real danger? And can it be done something for helping them, for example, self-defense?
Well, the Armenians are in a very precarious situation. A large segment of the community, probably the majority, are in Aleppo, or Halab, as they say in Syria. Halab itself is divided. There's government forces and rebel forces, and the Armenians are caught in between. They haven't been targeted per se, but Armenians have been caught in the crossfire, and some have been killed over the past couple of years. So the situation is very, very bad for them. I think if they do take up arms, it could be even worse, because if they're on the losing side, then the winning side could take retribution against them. So it's very, very, very difficult situation.
So the question is not taking arms against somebody, just to have arms for self-defense.
Well, that's a possibility, but then once you have arms, then the inclination is then to use them, and then once you start using them, then what? Because of their small numbers, they may hold out in some neighborhoods, but overall they wouldn't withstand either the government forces or the opposition forces, just because those numbers are so overwhelming.
So do you think that if such a situation started as it was decades ago in Lebanon, will any country help minorities there as they help to topple the Syrian government?
Well, the U.S. is working with the moderate opposition, and the moderate opposition is saying, we're going to protect the rights of all Syrians. Right now, I think the U.S. has gotten pledges from the moderate opposition to respect the rights of all Syrians, regardless of sectarian group or religion or ethnicity. And I think there's probably a lot of people within the moderate opposition who understand that Syria is a polyglot nation of many different groups, and for it to move forward, everybody has to be brought in. But the jihadists, those groups linked to Al-Qaeda, don't think that way. And if you look at the situation in Iraq next door, at least half the Christian population left Iraq since 2003 or were kicked out of Iraq. So that's the danger, that if you have more extreme elements, or if you have more and more bloodshed, much of the Christian population, including the Armenians, will try to leave. And already we see thousands of Armenians either going to the Republic of Armenia or going to Lebanon for safe haven. Well, I hope the situation is resolved peacefully, but unfortunately, when you're dealing with a civil war, it's very difficult to predict an outcome. You know, you have a situation where the rebels aren't strong enough to defeat the government right now. The government is not strong enough to defeat the rebels. So just leaving aside the chemical weapons issue, the civil war is likely to go on, sadly, for quite some time.
Thank you very much again. Thanks a lot.